I wrote a book.
Let's go.
Y'all, I wrote a book. Let's go. I knew it was going to happen.
Full recommended inside is your frameworks, the process that you follow, right? You break it down so well.
It's simply asking the brand, what is success to you? What is your goal with this collaboration will allow you to come back to them and say, oh, well, knowing that that's your goal, what about we do this thing over here that I've never done before, but it seems like that's going to help you move the needle.
Do you find that maybe a lot of people are intimidated to maybe have those conversations? Is it lack of information? Is it, maybe they don't know the market?
Probably 80% of the creators, influencers, podcasters that come to me have never been on a phone call with a brand. They're petrified.
Hey guys, welcome back to Content is Profit.
We had the one and only, the incredible Justin Moore, who just published his book, Sponsor Magnet. He was so kind to send us a copy. And then today you are listening to the new conversation that we have with him. Lots of, very specific tips and case studies on how sponsorships might work for you and how you can secure some of those. Absolutely amazing. Justin is great. If you want to claim his book, make sure you go to sponsormagnet.com. Disclaimer, he's actually not paying us. He is that cool. And we believe so much on his sponsorship model and what he talks about that we just want to support him. So make sure you go to sponsormagnet.com. Also, we bought quite a few copies. And if you want a copy for free from us, make sure you send us a message at BizBrosco on Facebook, on Instagram, or send us an email. I don't know, whatever way it is that you want, but those copies are limited. So make sure you do it quick and we can send you one of those free copies.
Cool. Have fun. Welcome back, Justin. Now that we talked about 7 minutes.
Yeah, now that we had a full behind the scene conversation.
Yeah, by popular demand in studio, by Fonzie, by everybody that, kind of heard us talking about sponsorship. You're here. You did something big recently, right? Want to walk us through?
I did something enormous. I got my personal bench press record. No, not that. I wrote a book.
Let's go.
Y'all, I wrote a book. Let's go. I knew it was going to happen. And I'm so stoked. Yeah. So it's called Sponsor Magnet.
Yeah.
How to attract, price, and execute your dream brand partnerships. So it's basically like a complete distillation of everything that I know over the last 15 years about, from collaborating with brands. I've done, over 500 sponsorships myself personally, made over $5 million. So it's like a big way in which my wife and I, as creators, have derived revenue over the years.
So cool.
But I also ran this agency for many years where I brought deals to other creators. So I basically took these two perspectives, put it in a book, and I can't believe we're here.
Yeah, that is true, man. You were kind enough to send us a copy of the book, Sponsor Magnet. So if you're interested listening right now and you want to get your hands on one of these books, go to sponsormagnet.com. And I also recommend you to listen to the first episode. It's published right before this one. We did a little bit custom intro.
Oh, shit!
What just happened, Justin? What just happened?
Guys... Hold on a second here. Okay. I see you guys. Okay. So I got to describe what just happened here. Right before we hit record, I told these two fine gentlemen that I was 4 books away from hitting 1,000 total sales for the book. And I told them it might happen on the podcast live.
It might.
And what just popped up here into my book order Zapier automation was, you guys just bought 10 books. What the hell? Let's go. Dude. Oh man, that is legendary. Guys, thank you so much.
No,
I super appreciate that. Like, holy cow, that really, really means a lot to me. You guys, and you'll forever claim that you pushed it over the top, right?
From this moment on, you are a Content is Profit bestseller. Just say it.
That is
by the way, for everybody listening or watching right now, and if you want one of these copies, just send us a quick DM. We're happy to
we'll send it to you.
This is by far the number one question we get from people that come in the studio and online. It's like monetization. As soon as we started the conversation, it's like, how can I go and start, looking into brand deals? I don't like to call them sponsorships anymore. It's brand partnerships, like you said on the book. So I'm stoked, man. I'm very happy for you. And of course, like what you're bringing onto the market is a huge solution for a lot of people out there. So thank you.
Absolutely. So
I appreciate that, man.
So excited. So, all right, where I was going before the awesome news, congrats on that very random purchase at the right time. Who would have known? Last episode, the first one that we did, we cover a lot of the nitty gritty on sponsorship, right? Yeah. And I took a few notes in here as a teaser. If you haven't listened to episode 1, make sure you go back. But, talking about do not commoditizing yourself by talking about your reach and all that stuff, right? Align yourself to the brand's goals. Be a detective. Do audience intent-based brand pitching. Don't just pitch any one of your favorite brands as your audience and pitch to what they want, right? Who to talk depends on the company size. And then we had a little kind of talk about a little spaghetti at the wall hypothesis that we had going on, which I absolutely love it. I'm definitely going to revisit that conversation. But what I want to do for today, right? You had your book, Sponsor Magnet. And again, fully recommended. Inside is your frameworks, the process that you follow, right? You break it down so well. But I want to cover a little bit of the case studies, right? Because somebody right now, listen, they're like, right, but how does that apply to me? They could have a medium-sized following, big following, small following, but as we know, doesn't really matter, right? Because I think this is my new favorite answer for most of things. It depends, right? When somebody talks to me about scenario-based things, I'm like, it depends. Every problem is unique. Any challenge is unique. So I would love to hear about some case studies. And actually, the first one I want to talk to is about this book. It's about our good friend, Paul Jameson. You introduced him to us. Yeah. We got the pleasure of actually meeting him live in one of the conferences. And he is a niche podcaster, right? So why don't you break down a little bit, kind of like what was the work that you did with him and some of the results that you guys got?
Yeah. So Paul is actually one of my longest running coaching clients. I mean, I think he holds the record for the single, the most like coaching calls that anyone's ever done with me is probably Paul. And so just a quick kind of context for Paul's business. So he runs a podcast called the Green Industry Podcast. And y'all listening are going to love this because he teaches lawn care professionals how to grow their business. And he's doing, somewhere between 130 and 150,000 downloads a month on his podcast. Yeah. And so how much more niche can you get for something like this, right? And he, when we first started working together, he very much was frustrated because he was seeing these big numbers, right? He would go to kind of these local kind of meet and greets and in conferences, regional events and things like that. And he was kind of becoming almost like a little mini celebrity because people were wanting to take photos with him, ask for his autograph. So he was seeing a lot of these like kind of big download numbers, but he was like, where's the money? Like I'm not like, being able to cover my costs here. And he had an editor and he had, some people who were a producer who was helping him with stuff. And so he was just pretty frustrated because even though he was optimistic about, and remember, he still at that time had a lawn care business. So he was kind of doing the side hustle juggling act, right? With the business and the content creation stuff on the side. And so basically we started, he booked like a coaching call at the very beginning. And he kind of just did this dump, to me of like, here's everything that's like going on right now. And I just don't know what to do. I've heard of this idea about getting sponsors and working with brands. But that whole process just feels so overwhelming. It feels very amorphous. It feels like there's all these different steps that you need to do. And I don't know anything. Right. And so basically we started working from zero. I take that back. He did do a very early deal. He did a very early deal where a brand came to him and they were like, hey, we'll pay you this amount of money to like run, ads on your podcast. And so he just basically said yes to whatever number that they gave him because he didn't know like, oh yeah, sure. You're gonna pay me $1,000 to do like 20 ad reads. Like that sounds awesome. I don't know what the number was. It was something like that. And so he just was very inexperienced. And so over the course of the next basically couple of years, he has absolutely completely transformed his business. He went from really struggling to know whether he could make this podcast sustainable financially for him to basically beating brands off with a stick. And so, he's done, he also, in addition to the podcast, he has social media. So he's able to kind of amplify these campaigns across social media as well as the newsletter. But I want to just share a quick anecdote that actually isn't in the book about Paul's story, because I think that this will be a really eye-opening lesson for a lot of podcasters listening, which was that one of the most recent partnerships, that most recent and most lucrative deals that Paul has ever done came recently from a brand that we all are very familiar with, probably, even if we're not in the lawn care space, which is John Deere tractor.
Oh, wow.
Right. We all know the John Deere tractor, that big green and yellow logo. We probably have all seen that at one point. Right. Yeah. And so John Deere is the behemoth in his industry. Mm-hmm. Right. And John Deere came to Paul recently and they said, Paul, we would love to collaborate with you. And so what a lot of podcasters do in this situation is they say, great, here's my media kit. Mm-hmm. Here's all my packages. Here's, A, B, C, D. Here's my pricing. Pick package 1 through 5. Right. And so instead, what, we have taught Paul, me and I have several sponsorship coaches on my team now, have taught Paul to do over the years is you do not do that. You don't say, here, pick one package. You say, let's get on a phone call. Yeah. Let's talk about what's going on, what's important to you. Tell me more about this campaign that you want to bring to life. And what the brand said, what John Deere said is they said, look, Paul, the largest trade show in our industry is happening in October. And you know what we would love for you to do? We would love for you to podcast in our booth for 3 days. We want you to bring all your friends and interview them. We want to interview people on the marketing team at John Deere Tractor. Yeah. And we want to have our logo in the background while you're filming all these videos. It's the largest event of the year. All the press are there, all the photographers, all the videographers, all the key opinion leaders in this industry go to this trade show. And so tell us how much it's going to cost for you to be in the booth for 3 days. So cool. And so he basically named his price. And
$100 million
became $100 million. Generational wealth. Right. No, but for real. And so this I hope is a great example for anyone listening that the whole point of the book and that kind of the central theme throughout the book is how do I have this mindset of creativity when I am talking with a sponsor? Because I may have been used to doing certain types of partnerships or certain types of deals, but as simply asking the brand, what is success to you? What is your goal with this collaboration will allow you to come back to them and say, oh, well, knowing that that's your goal, what about we do this thing over here that I've never done before, but it seems like that's going to help you move the needle.
Yeah. I think with some of the conversations that we've had, I think most people, obviously they don't know what they don't know. This is new territory for a lot of newer creators, right? They just hear it through, the veins, or they might see some sponsorship online as consumers, right? And they're like, maybe that's the way, right? And, there's obviously creators that are not business owners, right? So the content is not directly related to that, but they just have a message or they're very passionate about something. And like you say, a lot of people is like, okay, let me just cover my production costs initially and then go from there. I think that's step number one. Do you find that maybe a lot of people are intimidated to maybe have those conversations? Is it lack of information? Is it, maybe they don't know the market? Because, to have a conversation like that and go back to a brand, be like, hey, what do you actually need? Right. To me, it's like a different layer of that. Maybe we need to go through the negative experiences to be like, man, like this may be a partnership that, is not the best fit for me. How can people avoid that? Or what do you think? Like when they come to you guys and they consume your content, is that a correct theory of mine, or am I completely losing my mind?
It's funny because I was just I was commenting back and forth with someone on LinkedIn who was saying that it blew their mind. They were like a salesperson. That was like their job. They're used to getting on phone calls with brands and customers. And I had said like probably 80% of the creators, influencers, podcasters that come to me have never been on a phone call with the brand. They're petrified of this. Yeah. And so one of the reasons why they mail it in, or one of the reasons why they have a place on their website where you can book an ad spot in my podcast. Oh yeah, use Stripe, like whatever, use this. One of the reasons that they do that is because the prospect of getting on a phone call with a brand and having a conversation is terrifying. Maybe you're an introvert and you're like, no way, there's no way I'm going to do that. Right. This is why I'm podcasting in the privacy of my bedroom. I don't want to talk to a human being. And so I totally get that. I totally empathize and I understand with that. I understand that. What I will say though, is that, you don't need to be a genius. You don't need to be an expert to be able to just establish simple rapport on a phone call with the brand. And all it really takes is doing a little bit of research before the call and writing down a list of 7 to 10 questions that you want to ask them. That's it. It's about asking them questions saying, hey, tell me a little bit more about your product roadmap. Tell me a little bit more about this campaign that you had in mind. Have you worked with podcasters before? If you did, how did it go? Did it go well? Did it not go so well? If it didn't go well, what was the reasoning? Do you have what's the competitive landscape looking like for you, in your industry right now? And there's going to be some probably industry specific questions that you might ask. But that should be the bulk of the call. It shouldn't, you shouldn't expect that you're going to need to get on this call and just be an expert and educate the brand and do all these things. No, that's not the point of the call. The point of the call is to learn more about them and ask questions from them. And so that hopefully maybe gives people a bit more comfort of getting on a phone call with the brand, because you don't need to have the answers. And by the way, if they ask you something that you don't know, you could say, you know what? No one's ever asked me that before. I'm going to think about that or do some research and I'll get back to you. And that actually, I think brands will appreciate that. 100%. Right? It's you're honest. You don't know the answer. I'll get back to you. They'll appreciate that more than blowing smoke.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds like, we talked about this on last episode, but we use the acronym WIFT, and it kind of sounds like you're sniffing something, but it's actually what's in it for them.
Is that when you sniff something?
I don't know. When I say WIFT, every time I use the acronym, I'm like, they probably think I'm talking about sniffing something out there, but.
Well, now I do. I wasn't before, but now I do.
Not everybody listening does.
Hey, you see, well, now they have that mental connection and that they will remember about WIFT and what's in it for them, right? And, I first learned it as a copywriting principle when you're, crafting your hooks or crafting your copy, what's in it for them. You got to talk about something that it interests them, right? That is for their benefit. And that is the same approach that you're using on these conversations with brands, right? You go with the mindset, okay, what's in it for, not what's in it for me. If they win, you are going to win as well, right? And go with that mindset. Tackle that conversation. Don't hide behind, your computer in your golden Speedos and, not jumping on a call. Jump on the call, have that conversation, because that's the way deals are going to be made.
The other reason that calls are so important is that you have to remember they probably, in addition to reaching out to you, they probably reached out to 20 other podcasters. Right. Because they are trying to kind of kick the tires on people. They have this larger budget, let's say 50, 100K, whatever, to spread the word about this initiative. And so they don't just want to work with you. They probably want to work with other people too. And so they're trying to just get an assessment of how much people are charging, how are we going to do this? What I always say is that when I ran my influencer agency, the brand who hired us would basically say, here's 100K. We want to work with 10 people, figure it out, because you're running the campaign for us. And so we had to do this kind of Tetris act where we were kind of getting someone's right here and they're right here and just trying to make it work because everyone charges differently. Right. And so the value of getting on a call is that you establish this rapport. And so here you were, the one person who took the call with the brand versus these faceless, nameless, to 19 other podcasters who just sent their media kit or sent their rates. And so even if you're charging 2 or 3 times what some of these other people the brand may just decide to hire you because they're you know what, even though Justin's more expensive, I just feel like it's going to go better. He seemed like he was more invested in this than these other people. I can't tell you how many times I did that when I ran the agency. I just felt I don't know, I'm going to hire this person because these other people, I don't know, they seem a little unprofessional.
Is that intention, right? You see the intentionality, the energy behind people, and when you have that close conversation.
Have you ever run into where you pitch the call, right? They reach out to you or the brand, you might be talking to them, and then they're hey, we don't really want to hop on a call. Right. That's a possibility, I'm assuming, right?
It is.
What in that case, right? Do we continue the conversation? Do we pursue for another call? What's the pivot there? Be maybe this is not the brand for me because they don't want to talk to me, right? I don't know.
So there's two alternatives that I suggest in this situation, because it absolutely happens.
Yeah.
I really, really like doing asynchronous videos like on Loom or Tela. So I do this a lot where they'll say, oh, we're super busy. Like, can you just give us the info or something like that? And I will fire up a video. And I will just say, hey, I just have a few quick questions to try to scope this partnership. I say, tell me what success would look like. What types of platforms are you hoping to activate on? I kind of rattle off a bunch of the things in the book about like kind of what are the main things that you need to ask of the brand to kind of quantify and qualify what the engagement is going to look like. And simply doing that asynchronous video. And then at the end of it being like, hey, and if if it's easier, you can just send me back a video like this too. So we don't have to get on a call. You can just do it asynchronously. A ton of brands have said, oh yeah, this is cool. Thank you for sending this. I've never thought of this idea. And yeah, this is great. and they fire up a 5-minute video. Cool. We don't have to waste an hour on Zoom. And then if that still doesn't work, you could still try to ascertain some of this information via email. You could say, hey, fine, I get it. Whatever. Here's the 8 things I need to know, which is like, I started to mention it, right? The goal, the, scope of work. And I call it the DUE rule, DUE. So deliverables, the usage rights, right? Do they want to repurpose this at all on their platforms for paid advertising? And the exclusivity, that's another thing you need to ask about, right? So there's a lot of these elements that you can ask for via email as well.
Cool. Yeah. Or you can just show up to the CEO's house, knocked on their door and be like, hey, let's just
on
chat.
Your golden speedos.
On the golden speedos. Yeah.
100%. For those of you guys who have no idea why we're talking about golden speedos so much, make sure to listen to the first episode.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. That's a callback right there. And very intentional callback. I love this. So I'm curious you said the DUE on exclusivity. I would assume also exclusive deals would be priced at a higher rate too, right? If you're only allowed to work with one brand.
Exactly, because that represents a direct opportunity cost for you can't work with any of the brand's competitors for a certain duration. This is pretty common with as you grow your podcast, where in the insertion order, it'll literally say, not only, by the way, this is fascinating, but not only can you not work with any of their competitors for a certain duration, but a lot of podcast agencies will ask for first right of refusal. So they'll say, hey, if one of these other competitors, comes to you, even after the exclusivity period lapses, there's this longer period, like 6 months or a year or something, where if that happens, you have to come to us first and allow us to make an offer to you prior to this other competitor. And that actually is dangerous, because they'll say something like, you give us 10 business days to make an offer to you, first right of refusal. And like this other brand, this competitor is not going to be willing to wait 10 business days. Like, what the heck? That's crazy. So like, again, you can negotiate this stuff. You can either say, hey, I don't want a first right of refusal clause in there, or I'm going to give you 48 hours. That's fine. But 48 hours, you need to give me a response. And so this stuff matters. Like this could represent real dollars out of your pocket.
Yeah. That's super interesting. I'm curious if you have, we went over that case study with Paul, and it was a very positive case study. I'm curious if you have the other side of the coin. Maybe a case study that the result wasn't what the creator expected, right? That they were like, oh, it was rough. Of course, we signed a contract. I'm going to have to fulfill not what I wanted, but then of course there's always lessons.
Yeah. So, I mean, I could rattle off a bunch of horror stories that my wife and I have had happen personally, but I could share another example from one of my coaching clients where, the outcome was not great. So, I'm going to redact some information as I tell this story. But basically, one of the largest streaming services, so you can imagine which one this is, came to my client with, they had a new show that they had invested, a lot of multiple millions of dollars, tens of millions of dollars in the shows, a lot of fanfare. And they wanted to hire my client to create some content. It was going to be not just social media content, but there was going to be an experiential element to the activation. So he was going to be doing stuff in person at a conference and all this stuff. And it was going to be a lot of work, like a ton of work. And there was multiple meetings that had happened to kind of scope the partnership out and do all these things. And so I was working with my client to put together like a really detailed, comprehensive proposal that we would then bring to the client and say, okay, here's what it's going to be. And it was going to be, 6 figures plus, like it was going to be a lot of money. And so we worked together extensively to design this whole thing. And everything was looking really good. It was really good, really good. And then at the very last moment, the brand cut the budget. They said, you know what? We're so sorry. Like, we were, and they had like a multi-million-dollar budget for marketing for this whole thing. And so like, it was just that the social media activation component line item on the marketing budget got cut at the 11th hour, basically a couple weeks before the event. And my client was just so destroyed. It was distraught. Sure. They were so looking forward to this. In their mind, it was like definitely going to happen. And so I tell this story for a specific reason, because this has happened to my wife and I many times where we really thought that this was going to happen. And it was just like a kind of a foregone conclusion. We're waiting on the contract and this type of thing. And for whatever reason, the brand made some changes. And the danger here is that you turn as a creator from an Uber fan of the brand to an Uber hater. You're like, screw this brand. How dare they? They jerked me around. I was on all these calls and all these meetings forever. And then they did this to me. Screw them. I'm going to tell everyone I know. In fact, I'm going to make a TikTok talking about how much this brand sucks. And
game over.
This happens.
All the bridges.
People do this. People do this, right?
Wow.
They turn into an Uber hater. And what I always have to say is that this is business.
Yeah.
It sucks. I will be the first one to say it sucks. And yes, my wife and I have gotten, super bummed when stuff like this has happened. But if you can be the person who says, look, I get it. I understand this is business. This happens sometimes. If you could say that to the brand, or if you could say that to the agency, they are going to remember that. They're going to remember the fact that, and by the way, it probably was not even them. It was their boss that made the decision.
They're probably,
or it was their agent.
wanting to have that conversation. They're like,
they don't want to have that conversation. Yeah, they feel so terrible probably too, right? And so remember, they're humans too, right? And so they can empathize with you probably. Yeah. And so if you can remember, I guarantee you in their mind, they feel terrible. And the next opportunity that they have to bring you a deal in the future, you're going to be the first person they think of because they feel so bad about what happened with that last deal. But if you blew them up, if you said, screw you, how dare you, if you burn the bridge, you're never going to give them that opportunity to kind of pay you back.
Yeah. My mind goes to probably a lot of people will think like, oh, I wish I would have closed the deal earlier, make it work before this happened, etc. My first thought is kind of like having that stoic mindset, right? Which is what can you control, which is your response. You cannot control those events. You had no idea that could have happened. Maybe the brand, the people you were talking to, they had no idea that was going to happen either, right? But at the end of the day, like rather than being reactive and, start bad-mouthing the brand, you can reflect on it and say, okay, I don't want to burn any bridges. I believe there might be a future opportunity, whether that is that brand, sponsoring me next, or somebody that's in that position, they might go to a different company and they might call you back and they're like, hey, it's great working with you. I love that. Come here and do it. Right. So I think a little bit of that stoic mindset and calm in your response, right? What can you control? You can always control the way you're going to communicate with them and deal with that.
Yeah. Justin, how much of this is also like a system, a process, right? As in like, hey, I have these brands that I might, proactively look out and establish conversations or relationships. And then maybe from some of those opportunities that maybe don't come through, it's like, how much of that is like weekly, monthly, bi-weekly follow-up to just, hey, how you doing? Building relationship aspect of it. Like in my mind, I'm like, well, if that scenario happens, there's going to be a new opportunity down the road, right? Like my mind is already thinking, hey, let's continue to work together. Let's continue to stay in touch. I'll keep you posted on what I'm doing. How much of that is involved in this process?
I mean, it's a huge part of it. And you're absolutely right. There is a whole kind of system to doing these types of follow-ups. Even if that deal fell through, you're constantly basically staying on the radar of these brands and these companies so that, again, the next time an opportunity slides across their desk that you'd be a great fit for, they instantly think of you. And it's not just, hey, just wanted to follow up. Do you have any deals for me? Hey, how's it going? Are you working on any campaigns that I could support? This type of thing. That's super annoying and not useful because the amount of, I call it basically the amount of times that a brand is in an active recruitment phase where they're actively trying to find people to collaborate with on a campaign is very small. Like a lot of brands running, let's say quarterly campaigns. So there may be 10 days, a 10-day period where they're like actively emailing people, hey, can you do this thing, this type of thing, 10 days, 4 times a year, basically. So it's 40 days out of the year, 10% of the year. So the likelihood of you reaching out and them like being ready, yeah, here's the deal, this is great, boom, is very low. And so your expectations have to be shifted about what the purpose of nurturing is. It's about staying top of mind so that when they're ready, they can think of you. I want to share just one more quick example about something that happened that was not great for a deal that my wife and I did, because again, this is something that happens. You can't anticipate it, but it's a real, like how you respond to it really matters. So the quick example is that my wife and I were going to be doing a deal with a jewelry brand, and we created the content. We signed the deal. We created the content. Everything was going great. And then the day or the morning of when we were about to publish the activation, the brand frantically emailed us and said, "We're so sorry, but we unexpectedly ran out of inventory." And so all of a sudden they paid us a bunch of money and we're going to publish this thing, drive a bunch of people to the e-commerce store, and they can't buy it. Yeah. No one can buy stuff. And so they basically, said like, well, I don't know, what could we do? Like all this stuff, could we delay it? Like what can we do? And so we basically gave them 2 options. We said, look, we can do 2 things. We can publish it as is and basically change the call to action to a wait list call to action, like, hey, sign up for the wait list for when this, piece of jewelry is going to be available again, or we can delay until the inventory is back in stock. Like that's okay. I understand. Yeah. And so we easily could have been pissed. We could have been like, what the heck? Screw the brand. Like they should have known this. Like this is not our responsibility. Too bad. Like we're going to post it anyway. People have this mindset, right? And it's not our problem. You figure it out. Whereas just really trying to empathize and understand, like the brand didn't know that. There may be someone placed a bulk order, or like they just didn't know that, a lot of brands have omni-channel distribution. So they have retail stores and e-commerce. And so just like, it's hard to predict sometimes these things that happen. But to your point, like if you can look at this more like a partnership, which is what it really is, you should always be trying to, investigate creative solutions.
Yeah, I love it. It's honestly very similar to a process of selling, again, understanding the goals of the other person on the other side, in this case of the brand that you want to work with, and thinking whiffed, right? Again, no sniffing anything, just whiffed what's in it for them. Right? So that's also amazing, Justin.
You guys need to get those markers, the ones that like smell like watermelon or something. Just get the rainbow pack and just like,
and then you'll find us in that corner addicted to them.
I like that.
Yeah, well, you should do that.
This has been absolutely amazing, man. Thank you so much again for you listening. We want to get him to not only 1,000, but 10,000 sales over there. So make sure you buy the other 9,000 left. So if you want your book, make sure you go to sponsormagnet.com. Is that right, Justin?
That's right. And guys, seriously, you will forever be the ones who got me over the hump.
Let's go.
I super, super appreciate it, honestly. And by the way, if you end up fighting over that copy, just let me know and I'll send you another one.
Let's go.
No worries. We'll take one of those copies that we bought, and the rest of the copies. Please, if you're listening and you're like, I want to get my hands on Justin's book, feel free to send us a message, right? At BizBrosCo on Facebook, on Instagram. Say, hey, I listened to the episode. I loved what you guys talked about. I want part 3, especially with the golden speedos and all that stuff. And then we'll send you one of the books, one of the copies that we got. So thank you so much, Justin. Anything else that you want to share before we head out?
No, you guys are so kind. I super, super appreciate it. And one of these days, we're going to do an episode live in person because I really want to make that happen at some point.
Yes, let's go.
That'll be a blast.
No, absolutely. In golden speedos. All right, guys, with that said, thank you so much for tuning to the Content Profit Podcast. Go ahead and follow the show in your favorite podcasting platform and on social media at BizBrosCo.
That is right. And if Justin here helped you move one step closer towards your sponsorship goals, make sure you share this episode and don't forget to leave a 5-star review. See ya.
Bye, guys.